Everybody, my name is Steve Pretz. I'm the president of the BouMatic company. And this year, we're selling the 85th anniversary of founding of BouMatic. And it's our pleasure to be in the home of Susie Whitten and with her brother, Dick. And we are really just reminiscing about the origins of BouMatic, how it started with Lawrence Bouma. And this is also a year that we inaugurate occasional award called the Lawrence Bouma Award to really memorialize the founder of BouMatic. And this will be something for people within the industry that are connected with BouMatic. But again, it's happy to be with you today. And we just kind of want to learn a little bit about your dad. Not only as a pioneer in the dairy equipment business, but also just as a person. Because I had the good fortune to meet him a few times, and I would say, the only way I would say he was just a real decent person. And you just don't see that much. And it was really my personal pleasure. The little bit I got to meet him, it was really enjoyable. So anyway, why don't you go and start out and introduce yourself and tell us about your involvement with BouMatic in the past.
Well, I'm Dick Bouma, Dad's oldest son, oldest of 7 siblings. Being the oldest, I remember a lot of that happened, the founding of BouMatic Milkers. I got lots of things I could say, but I just remember Dad as a fabulous father. We had an incredible family.
And I'm Susie Whitten, and I'm the youngest of Lawrence's children, 7 of us, 2 boys and then 5 girls in a row. So Dick and I call ourselves the bookends.
There you go.
The oldest and the youngest. So my memories of BouMatic are probably not nearly like my older brothers, especially because they were involved in the business, but I was a child. And I remember going down there and being in my dad's office and sitting and doodling at his desk and going in the back watching my mom. She worked out there, so I'd sit with my mom sometimes and watch her. I don't know what Mom did, put together stall cocks or something.
Yeah, put together stall cocks, I think.
Yeah, those are my memories.
Yeah,
It was just always something that's always been in our blood and talked about in our home all the time. BouMatic Milkers.
Well, earlier we were kind of talking about the origin of it, and here's a picture of. This was a small dairy, but also sold processed milk at the farm.
Yeah, cash and carry dairy where we did all of the processing ourselves right there. I mean, the pasteurizing, homogenizing, everything in bottling.
And that was in Ontario?
Yes, South Ontario. And my brother and I was 13, maybe 12, 13. My brother and I, our job was to wash bottles. Dad came home from work one day when we were around the kitchen table for supper, and he told my mom, he said, Geneva, he said, I'm putting a dairy on the market. We're going to sell it. And he said, if it sells, then we're going to go to Alaska this summer. This was 1954.
Yeah.
It was just a dirt road. And dairy sold right away, and sure enough, he bought a new Buick and a new little house trailer, and there were 5 of us kids then, and my folks.
6 left and went home.
Yeah, 6 left.
When he was born, they left home.
And we took off for right after we got out of school and came back just before school started.
Yeah.
And we got home and.
But that was always our dad. He was very adventuresome.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to try new things. Always willing to try something new. Go out of bounds.
So, like we were discussing earlier, it sounds like your grandfather was part of the dairy equipment business already. So you come back from Alaska.
We got back from Alaska, and of course Dad had no income or no business because he had sold it. And Grandpa Bouma had this Bouma distributing. So he got back, and Dad kind of went into business with Grandpa Bouma. I think he might even have bought it from him. I don't recall exact, but it became, it was Bouma distributing, but Dad pretty much took over. Instead of just dairy supplies, Dad had a lot of ideas on things, and milk and pipeline milking
So he makes a decision to go on. So what encouraged him, or most business revolves around a problem and then development of a solution to the problem. What was he trying to solve, or what was his vision?
At that time, and Dad had been a dairyman, so we'd had several dairies prior to that, or 2 or 3 dairies prior to that. And the big problem in dairies was mastitis. And it was quite a problem. And the milking machine industry at that point said mastitis was caused by damaging in the corral, dirt in the corral, irritation. And Dad came up, he said no, and I don't know where he got this idea, but Dad said no. He said the milking machine is creating mastitis. He brought that to the industry, and the local dealers, they just laughed at him. They said, no, it's not a milking machine. They've been around forever. That's mastitis is too. But anyway, he said, everything made fun of him. They said no. So he, on his own, he started working on lowering the vacuum, lower vacuum, softer pulsation, not so harsh, and a much softer, different shaped tit cup rubber, just to massage the milk out. Now, and I remember one dairy, one of the first dairies he put his equipment in was in Fontana, Portuguese Dairy, and the guy came back after a few months and said, my mastitis is going away and my production is going up. And that was really what put him on the map in Chino Valley, because he went around and told everybody, man, you can't believe what that Bouma's doing.
Well, and I think it's really, even today, we use the phrase or slogan, gently, quickly, and completely. And I think your father really brought that to people's attention. I think it's a great story, because now we know mastitis can come from both places.
Yeah.
Certainly bad cow environments, environmental bacteria are a challenge, but also the milking machine had tremendous impact on it.
Yeah, and he also said that the cow, which of course you guys know, a cow, the front half and the back half, 2 quarters, milk out at a different rate. So he said what they're doing is they're leaving it on till all the milk's out of the bag. But what they've done now is really irritated, I think the back quarter or half is, and so he said, no, we've got to regulate that, and that's
split pulsation, where you have more aggressive in the rear quarter where most of the milk is and less in the front. And see, that's interesting to me. I didn't really realize he was really into it in that detail, but absolutely at the time it was a big deal. But here's what I feel is really one of his novel approaches, a very early version of what would become the alternating pulsator. It's really interesting and really a simple device, just 2 solenoids with an armature inside. But compared to everything else in the industry, it was really revolutionary. And I really give him, of course, this is what really became the industry standard after that, more of a mass-produced, everything into plastic housing, of course, the stall conch. We take it for granted, but really that was also his innovation.
Instead of putting a hose on and turning a valve, you just shoved it in. Like I said earlier, those marbles were what made my brother and I popular in the neighborhood.
Yeah. He was talking about at that time, before China was a mass producer of inexpensive items, it was Japan. After the war, everything was, all commodities came out of Japan, and they bought just tons of marbles like kids would play with, and that's what was sitting inside the stall conch and break the vacuum. So again, using some commodity that's available, predictable, and using it in a different way.
At that time, he had no claw of his own. He had to buy the milking machine from whoever.
Yeah.
And they all of a sudden realized, hey, we can't be selling to our competitors, so he couldn't buy. So he had to come up with his own. And they came up and they got a stainless steel tube and chopped it into sections and welded that all on. Well, then they had to close the ends, put a clear plastic on it, and put those in there so you could see the milk coming in. So you could actually see if one of the quarters of the cow dried first, the milk would go down and pop it off and he'd crimp the line over and let the rest milk down. So that was his
innovation, because at that time, approximately what year would that have been? When he got this one?
it was 55, 56.
So at that time, the dominant milking was still buckets at that time.
Oh, yeah.
But they had the really suspended bucket that Surge had. But De La Valle had this small claw concept, but it was solid stainless. You had no visibility of the milk, and they had rubber tube to the pail. So you really had no idea what was going on with the pail. Surge had this gigantic suspended bucket, which was great for cow milking, very stable vacuum. But again, you had no idea what was going on with the cow. And if you had more than, a couple of buckets going, it's a challenge. So, and I think, we look at it today, it's relatively small, the outlet is small, but in 1955, the average dairy cow was maybe given 7,000 pounds of milk in a lactation and maybe 35 pounds in a milking. So to compare what happens today with then, it's just a completely different world. And he built a machine that fit the world that he was in. So yeah, that's really, really tremendous.
Well, I worked for Dad, like I said, starting when I was in school and through high school. And so my dad and my Uncle Carl would get together, and Dad was Dad's ideas and so on, they would work out. And then I saw all of that develop through his.
So Carl worked with him also. He was kind of more the implementer of the ideas.
Dad was the inventor, Uncle
Yes.
Carl was the creator.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, all right, take that idea
It
and
was
let's
more
make something.
mechanical.
Okay,
My dad had a lot of great ideas, but
Yep.
Uncle Carl was the.
and it takes both.
It takes both,
It
yeah.
takes
They
both
need
to
each
be
other.
successful, yeah. And then, of course, I think really innovative here, they got the old location of the business and like the archery bow, and and that's really sticky advertising,
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
His office was right here in the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the third and last building for BouMatic, or started out as Bouma Distributing in the Valley. First one that Dad had was a little building down on South Euclid. There'd been a little old meat market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he started there, and then he needed more room, so he moved up onto rented a big old barn on Mission Boulevard in Ontario. And that was where a lot of the development, these first things were thought of there. And then he needed a much bigger place, and this was just at the completion of building that building.
So obviously successful, and you got to remember Euclid, that went right through the center of the Chino dairy area. So in that time, it's a suburb of LA now, clearly.
Yeah.
Still some dairies, but it's really changed a lot. But at that time, that was the center of big dairies, and big dairies being 150, 200 cows, right? Flat barns, a lot of things. So the business progresses, and, at some point, he sells BouMatic. How did that decision come about, and what kind of created that thought? Or clearly he's successful, the business is growing, he's making an impact, he's mainly West Coast centered, but certainly has a dealer network now to work with, and it's a steadily growing business.
Part of it was the business was growing faster than the cash was coming in. And it became a cash poor business. And about that time, Chuck Albrecht, the founder of the Dairy Cool Equipment Company, they were looking to expand into the milking machining industry besides their tankers and tanks. And he had heard about this very successful small company out in the West, and he got in contact with Dad and kept in contact with Dad for a period of time. I don't think a long period of time. And finally Dad decided that, he had to sell. And
most business failures are not because they can't get enough sold, it's that they can't feed the growth. And it's really hard for a small business, even like your dad's, to get the financing and to feel comfortable with it, because it's an unpredictable world, particularly at that time. A lot of ups and downs in the business, and yeah, that's always a hard decision, though. You put your life into it and you make a successful impact.
with Chuck Albrecht, in the picture, Dad was able to sell the business without just bankrupting it, and then the investors, his people in the valley that had invested in BouMatic were part. He was able to at least recoup their investments, and that was Dad. He was a very ethical man. He was a very, very ethical man.
I think that speaks a lot to the character of the guy. And so I kind of like to, Susie, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what it's like being the Bouma family? What was important to your dad, really? Certainly BouMatic was important, but what other things were really center of his life?
I'd have to say the center of his life was his faith in God. That was, I think we could all attest to that.
Yes,
that,
absolutely.
Yeah. His father, his grandfather, but my dad was, I think that's where, he was so ethical, is because that was the center of his life. Very involved in the church. He was involved in the community, and that he worked for Gideon's, the Gideon Bibles you see in hotels.
Absolutely.
My dad always had a little Gideon pin on his lapel, and he worked with Gideon's for years. He worked with Christian Businessmen's Association in Chino. He picked their speakers once a month. He was very involved in that. There's a huge thrift store now down in Chino area called Three-Way Thrift. He was very instrumental in getting that going, and that thrift store supplied funds to the Christian school, to a Christian retirement home, and to a special needs home called Salem Christian Homes. So his faith was a huge part of his life, and I think he raised all of us the same way. Like, we did he was very adventuresome, a lot of camping trips. Tons of fun, but even on vacation, if we were like in Yellowstone National Park, we would go to the amphitheater and go to church on Sunday. No vacation
from church. That's right.
But very family-minded, all of us, we've talked with our siblings a lot lately. We have this huge text thread going, and just talking about, reminiscing about Dad, and just what a loving, fun dad he was, because he just loved to have an adventure, something to go see.
Yeah, and I can tell from talking to you, you live long enough and you really get to know people. That's not everybody's experience. I mean, there's some people have a hard way, and it's really a great gift to have great parents. Somebody that just cares.
Yeah.
You don't have to do much. If you care, that's enough.
We knew that he loved us, and he raised us to be loving people. He raised us to love our mom. He respect our mom, and he respected her tremendously.
So after he sells BouMatic to the Albright family, and of course, it's really legendary what happened, and they maintained the BouMatic brand to this day, and we're really proud of that. I tell you, it's been my pleasure to go through all this with you, and thanks for having us in your home, Susie. It was great, and we just kind of wanted to memorialize your dad, and really, I would like to say some of this is surprising, but just the limited amount of time I spent around him is not surprising at all. And I guarantee you, somebody like Lawrence Bouma did more for people you've never heard of than you'll ever know. It's our pleasure to continue to memorialize his name, and also have this rotating, memorial honor for him. And again, thanks a lot for your time, and we really appreciate it. And just very moving to talk to you about your dad.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.